So I think both of you talk about this as if this is easy, all right? But I know that it isn't. So, this might come as second nature to yourselves. You must have built a framework to do it. But taking that example, right, where you found something, you were localizing a game, everything was looking good at the creative level, and then you found a break in the chain in the story. There must have been a point where you gathered together and you brainstorm and you talk about what could be impacting this. And I'm
Yeah.
interested to hear from both of you how you do that, because obviously UA is obviously very data driven, lots of numbers and data, and creative is very artistic. And not always do those two things work well together. So how do you go about those conversations to get a positive impact?
I think it's a very good question, and I can tell you, from working at Tapnation, although many companies have adopted themselves working remotely since COVID, but at Tapnation we have always been working remotely, even pre-COVID. So it was not something new for us. So we have always been working on how to make teams work remotely more efficiently. So we already had like many mechanisms in place, meaning like we would have a weekly call every Monday just for the brainstorming session, like where the UA team would share the data in real time for the creatives that were given to us last week. And we talk about like what worked, what didn't work. And then we also talk about like, okay, like this thing is working, how we can improve it better, because of course like every week we don't find the winning creative, right? It can take months. It's the hardest part to like get past the winning creative. So our constant job is every week we sit down together and for 1 hour, and that's the thing we do, like just to talk about what we can work, what's not working, if something is working, why is it working, and what we can learn from that. It's all about testing and failure, like as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, for example, on the Deep Master, on the game that we were working close to Jatin, for example, we want to learn some learnings. We want to get some learnings on some. So we made a. For example, we wanted to find out which object is the best performing. So we created a special campaign on Facebook for the which object is working better. So it was all exactly same design with the all creatives, but just the object was different. So we find a winning object, which is b-ball, basketball, and we find the winning creative out of that. So this process has this kind of wins, I think.
Great. So you basically, in short, if you put that effort in, if you're willing to find a way of having that communication together, you see the impact of that. You see that
Of course.
maybe not super quick, but relatively quickly in terms of what the outcome of this is.
Exactly. And I think like if we are not like working together, we might not see the impact at all. Like it sounds like horrible to say that, but I think there's a certain level of truth to that,
Mm.
because if the creative team is not aware about what's working, what's not working, and what's the data behind it, so I think they're just blindsided on their creativity and the hard work they put in to make the creatives. So like for them, like for us, in fact, like when we look at the creatives, we are quick enough to judge it's good or bad.
Mm.
One thing I've learned working in this industry is it's not a right way to approach the situation. Like we are like if we say like this creative is good or bad without data, like you cannot say that. Like we don't know what's gonna work.
So actually talking about that, because I think this is important. What you're talking about is a cyclical process, right? You're constantly going through this cycle. Now, both of you, this is not the first time you've done this, right? So how do you actually combat that? Because it must be very easy to get into a meeting where you're like, here we are again, having the same conversation again, and just kind of losing yourself to the degree where you're like, I don't know what to do now. So, how do you work together to avoid that situation, to keep iterating, to keep innovating?
How do I find it? By asking with the UA manager, hey man, what is working? Which level has been played too much? Like we can also uh, see and that data and make the ad based on that. So brainstorming gives you logic brings you at one point, but you know, Albert Einstein, creativity sends you to everywhere. So,
Excellent quote.
so
Yeah.
yeah.
Like just to add upon that, I think I can imagine like looking in the perspective of Ergenc on the creative side, like working on the same game for months. Of course, like because we are in the business of hyper casual, like we don't have like a lot of variations in the game itself. The game has to be quick, simple, snackable. And for that, like it's really hard to come up with something like which is different and which is something they haven't made before. But for that, like what we have done at Tapnation, we have created, like we recently started this project, like about like making a creative game storming session. It's very different from what we have with the creative team and the UA team, but over there we invite people from the company, and everyone is like open to pitch their ideas, like how they would like to see the creative, and what would they want to see, like the color, or what if there like some trend going on. Like right now we know like Squid Game is going on a rocket mode, and now like everyone is like, if you go on the App Store page, you will see like all the apps have like Squid Game logo. All the if you go on like Sensor Tower app and you're looking for the creatives, I'm pretty sure like you will find like creatives inspired by Squid Game. So I think like it might be like, okay, like someone brought Squid Game idea on the table. Someone is watching something else which is trending, which creative team might not know about. And that's the whole idea behind this thing. Like it's basically, we had like until now we had a call for game storming where we would like pitch the game, like new games, but like having a call just for creative game storming was like something unique, and we recently started it. So we are like quite hopeful, and fingers crossed like it works out, like because our first result from meetings which we had over 1 month, it's still in the process, but like the prospects are looking quite good, I would say.
So as a final comment then, as something to share, this is stuff that obviously you've been doing for a long time. So let's say someone has identified that maybe they feel they have a problem in terms of the teamwork between creative and UA, or they're building that out for the first time. So maybe they've had one success and they're looking to replicate it. What advice would you give them in terms of starting out in the strongest place possible?
I think like the first thing I could add, like when companies are starting up, or like when new people are making the new teams, like sometimes like I've seen like people outsource their creative part like to the agencies. And I think like I'm not like gonna comment like if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm just gonna put my opinion on the table. But I think like it's not really might not be a good thing to do, especially like for a hyper casual business, because I can give the perspective of hyper casual, because we have to iterate like constantly. And second of all, you need to have a like a proper control of changing the colors, like, and it has to be done like quite fast. And like if you're working with the agency, it becomes like kind of tricky to share the data with them real time, and to have the same level of synergy you can have if the you have like an in-house creative team. So I think like that's something like I would like really push for, like to have like a team built up internally, and like of course like set up like a good communication channel between you and creative team, because as I mentioned in the beginning of the call, like both cannot work in isolation. Like they are like part of one team basically, although like they are doing like different job roles, but like it's, you don't have to see it that way. It just how to say, like I'm forgetting the saying, it just like one coin, just different sides, you know.
Budget for the ad side, so it to give the same opportunity, you know.
Like one of the feedback I had, like people, the UA managers working in different publishers or different gaming companies, is they are like coming up to open a new job roles, which is just about bridging the gap between you and creative. So
Hmm.
it's about like UA operations, because like for us, like it's okay, like we are a small company, but if we look at like a company which is operating at a large scale, they have a lot of UA managers, a lot of creative team, different projects. It can be a bit tricky to have like UA and creative teams sit together. It's quite harder to do it. and easy to say. So for that, like many companies are coming up with a role like just to have like operation side sorted, like that guy like has all the access to the data on the creative side, and it can be shared with the creative team, but also responsible for coming up with the ideation process of the creative. So I think like that's something like quite unique and interesting as well to me. That's something I found.
Well, listen, both of you, thank you ever so much for your time. Like, I found this really, really insightful. Really enjoyed this conversation, and I think the way that you both talk about it passionately, but also in a very exciting way. Do you know what I mean? And it feels like there's no better time to be talking about these things in this industry. So, Jatin and Ergenc, thank you very much for your time. And thanks for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
You too, Richard.
All right, and speak to you soon.
Hopefully. Bye bye.